Hey everybody, it's me, James from PASTORIA. Welcome to the 2025 MDIV Conference. And this is hosted by the Pool of Siloam, which is a consultancy of PASTORIA. The 2025 MDIV Conference is a one-person conference. Of course, that's me plus you. So in some sense, it's not one person, and I've kind of messed up there. But it is one person in the sense that it's just not like a bunch of people gathering together or anything like that. It's just myself recording, hopefully, a bunch of videos. And this one is about ministry strategy. And in particular, it's part one. There's going to be a part two. And part one is about kind of sensing the downward pressure of diminishing resources, or to put it another way, kind of just trying to talk a little bit about what happens and pointing out what happens when things are in decline or at least not growing. And kind of one particular thing that mainline Protestant churches, I think, in general do that I think is not going to help things in the long run. And so pretty much, first, as indicators decline, the organization feels a downward pressure. That the indicators I'm talking about are kind of the usual things of attendance on Sundays, giving, of membership volume, if you want to call it that. And these usual things kind of, if you're kind of a mainline Protestant denomination, it's no surprise to you that they are in decline. They have not been growing for a while. It may be up and down for a little bit. And in some cases, we might even be growing here and there. But in general, that does not seem to be the case. What this leads to is a genuine, what I call downward pressure, where there is this desire overall, maybe stated or unstated, to reduce everything. Reduce, let's say, kind of giving. Like, I'm a member of the United Methodist Church, and there may be some sentiment that has always been around, but perhaps even more pronounced now after kind of the recent quote unquote historic split in the denomination, and the giving that is eliminated because of that. Excuse me, the pressure to reduce the portion that is given to the denomination, which funds the denomination from local church giving, or to reduce, let's say, the positions that are in a typical local church, because pretty much the numbers are such that it can't really sustain that anymore. And not only that, why? What is the need to do that when there's not more people? There's kind of less, or just kind of the same. And not more needs to be done per se. And why even do more, which causes more work per se. And that's not necessarily what people are trying to do. So there's that. And I think that what that really leads to is kind of right here, number two, the focus on what to increase versus what to decrease. What should we increase and what should we decrease? I guess versus is not the most accurate term there. But the point is that there is this, along with this downward pressure, kind of the decision to make is, what do we increase and what do we decrease? The increase might be like, I know that it may be a surprise to hear something like increase, but the increase might be something like pay and it increasing by a certain percentage every year, no matter what, or increasing the number of, let's say, volunteer positions or positions that may not require ordination, or even increasing the number of people who get ordained, but then really eliminating, let's say, the need to have a guaranteed place of employment for them or something like that, that certain denominations like mine have tried to entertain before or have considered before. And anyway, the point is that this downward pressure leading to what should we decrease, what should we increase, might in the short term address or at least alleviate the implications that come with that downward pressure, or that downward pressure itself. But in the long run, in the long term, it does not really address much that's going to help things, because it is not really structurally changing conditions. It's not changing the dynamics involved. It's not changing kind of the way things have done before. It's not changing the way that it's been structured or what it is structured around or what things are centered around. And so in large part, the results will probably be the same. Even if right here, number 3, decisions become a matter of voice and representation. And I didn't put it here, but we'll talk about it in number 4, which is part 2. But what happens in terms of the decision to decrease or increase or decrease and increase is that it becomes a matter of surveys, it becomes a matter of informal conversations, it becomes a matter of votes, it becomes a matter of resolutions, it becomes a matter of caucuses and special interest groups, it becomes a matter of who we are, which is something that we hear a lot in mainline Protestant kind of visioning processes and mission statement crafting exercises and retreats and so on and so forth. It becomes a matter of how to, let's say, re-articulate oneself. It does not, though, actually lead to any kind of change that is going to be helpful for the future. Because in large part, if you might think of it this way, it's kind of a circular decision-making when you have a group of people that have led things a certain way, who are quite satisfied, actually, with how things have led, despite the decline. I mean, there's not really, if the value is not already growth, then there probably is not going to be all that much dissatisfaction. There's not going to be all that much dissatisfaction. There's going to be a passing of the buck or the kicking of the can down the line, but there's not going to be so much dissatisfaction. And therefore, if we kind of ask ourselves what we want to do as a denomination, we're just kind of going to recalibrate ourselves to the middle. What we've always done. And it's not like the people who are making the decisions are those who are used to making decisions outside of what their usual perspective. Anyway, getting ourselves to make a decision of what to decrease and increase becomes just kind of a circular, inwardly turning thing. And it becomes highly unlikely. The church, as a community of decision makers, if you ask me, is unlikely to commit to a different future if it is already satisfied with its past and present. It's very, very proud of the values that it stands for and the activities that it undertakes. It has no clue what to do with its funding, and it is losing people left and right. And it doesn't matter because it is being who they are or whatever. That's the usual way. Why would they even want to change that if growth is not a value from the beginning? So, what am I trying to say here in part 1? What I'm trying to say here is that when there is decline, there is an apparent downward pressure to reduce everything. And there is nothing really wrong with being sensitive to that downward pressure and wanting to, let's say, address it and maybe even alleviate it. But we must not succumb to it. We must not succumb to it because if all we were an institution that should be governed just by the people in that present time who are present and alive, if that's all that it were, then that would be fine. But as the body of Christ, no, we can't. And this is the paradox. This is somewhat of a paradox. We're ending on this point, but this is somewhat of a paradox, I think, of what it means to be the church. On the one hand, it has to be about how satisfied we are with how it is meeting our needs and our our requirements, our standards for what a church should be like and stand for, and so on and so forth. And on the other hand, if all it is good for is ourselves, it is not necessarily the church. And so in part 2, I want to talk about transformation as an alternative to reduction and maintenance. And really the key question is, well, transformation how? And if you look in the description of this video, you'll see the link to part 2 if you would like to take a look at it. And I hope that it will be helpful for you. Thanks for joining me in this session of the 2025 MDIV Conference. Once again, I'm James from PASTORIA, and this conference is being hosted by the Pool of Siloam, which is a consultancy of PASTORIA.